The plane wheels screeched against the tarmac, jolting Maya awake. She blinked against the afternoon sun, still trying to shake off the dream that clung to her like wet sand. In the dream, the ocean had whispered her name, its voice soft, yet insistent, like a lover drawing her closer. But something in the voice had terrified her. Something ancient, something she couldn't quite place. "Finally!" Nicole exclaimed, bouncing in her seat. "We're here!" Paradise. Maya forced a smile, pushing the strange dream to the back of her mind. It was supposed to be a fun getaway. Just her and her best friends Nicole, Danny, and Rachel. No responsibilities, no stress. A week at a luxurious island resort, surrounded by turquoise water and white sand. What could go wrong? But the moment they stepped off the plane, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The resort was stunning. Palm trees swayed in the breeze, and the ocean shimmered like a million diamonds scattered across the surface. As they were led to their bungalow, Maya kept her unease hidden. Maybe she was just tired, she thought. But as the group entered their room, the whisper came back. A soft, almost inaudible hum beneath the crash of the waves. "Maya?" Rachel's voice snapped her back. "You okay?" Maya nodded, but she wasn't. That evening, the four friends lounged on the deck overlooking the ocean, wine glasses in hand. Laughter filled the air, but Maya's attention was drawn to the sea, where the horizon blurred into the darkening sky. "I swear I've never felt more relaxed," Nicole said, stretching her arms above her head. "It's like the ocean has its own energy." Maya's heart thumped at those words. The ocean. The same ocean that had whispered to her in her dream. "Maya?" Danny leaned in, concern in her eyes. "Are you sure you're okay? You've been quiet." She wanted to tell them, but how could she explain something she didn't understand? The sea was calling her, pulling her in. I'm fine, just tired." But deep down, Maya knew that wasn't it. The first night, Maya awoke to the sound of waves crashing outside the bungalow. It was louder than she remembered, almost aggressive. She checked her phone. It was 3 in the morning. As she sat up, the whisper returned. Only this time, it wasn't soft. It was clear, sharp, and unmistakable. "Maya." Her breath hitched. She slowly turned her head toward the window, but nothing was there. Only the dark expanse of the ocean, illuminated by moonlight. "Maya, come." Her pulse quickened. She scrambled out of bed, rushing to the bathroom and splashing cold water on her face. The whisper faded, but her heart wouldn't stop racing. This place wasn't paradise. It was something else. By the third day, Maya was barely holding it together. Donnie had been acting strange since the first night, distant and unnaturally quiet. Then there was Nicole, who had disappeared for hours that morning. When she came back, she claimed she had been walking along the beach, but her eyes seemed glazed, her skin cold to the touch. Rachel, usually the practical one, dismissed it all, saying they were probably just jet-lagged. But that night, as they sat for dinner in the resort's open-air restaurant, the mood was tense. "Maya," Nicole said, her voice unnaturally calm. "Have you heard it? The voice?" Maya's stomach dropped. She felt the blood drain from her face. What voice?" she stammered. Nicole leaned in, her eyes dark, almost hollow. "The ocean. It's been calling you too, hasn't it?" That night, the dreams returned. But this time, they weren't just dreams. Maya found herself standing on the beach, her feet sinking into the wet sand as the waves crashed against her ankles. The sea was black, roiling, like ink pouring across the earth. And in the distance, something was rising from it. A figure, tall, grotesque, its skin dripping like melted wax. It had no face, only a gaping void where eyes should be. but Maya could feel its gaze upon her, penetrating her soul. "Maya," it whispered in that same low hum, "come to me." She tried to scream, but her voice was swallowed by the roar of the sea. Maya woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The room was silent, but something felt wrong. Her body was vibrating with adrenaline, like she had just run a marathon. She looked around. The other girls were gone. Her heart pounded. She rushed outside to the beach, and that's when she saw them. Rachel, Danny, and Nicole were standing at the water's edge, motionless, their bodies swaying gently like puppets on strings. The ocean lapped at their feet, and Maya saw their faces expressionless, lifeless. They were whispering. "Maya, come." She stepped back, every fiber of her being screaming to run. But she couldn't move. The pull of the ocean was too strong. Tears streamed down her face as the whispers grew louder, more demanding ... "Maya, come." Suddenly, the ocean surged, and the grotesque figure from her dream rose again, its form even more horrifying in the moonlight. It reached out its dripping, faceless head toward her friends. And then it spoke, not in a whisper, but in a voice that rattled her bones. "Come, or they will drown." Maya's feet moved before her brain could process the command. She stumbled toward the water, her heart hammering in her chest. The waves were cold, biting into her legs as she walked deeper into the sea. Her friends turned to face her, their eyes completely black. "Maya," they chanted in unison. "You belong to the ocean." She fought to resist, but it was useless. The water was up to her waist now, swirling, pulling her in. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the waves. As the black water closed over her head, the last thing she saw was the faceless figure, its arms outstretched, welcoming her into the depths. The next morning, the resort staff found the bungalow empty, the beds neatly made, and no sign of the 4 girls. When the police were called, they searched the island for days, but no bodies were ever found. Only their whispers remained, carried by the waves, forever calling out to those who dared to listen. Some vacations are meant to be forgotten. The sun dipped low in the sky as the ferry approached Blackwater Cove Resort, casting an amber glow across the still water. Emma leaned on the railing, taking in the view, trying to shake the sense of unease that had clung to her since they boarded. It was just nerves, she told herself. After all, this was supposed to be a week of relaxation, a family vacation with her husband, Mark, and their 2 kids, Sophie and Jacob. "It looks pretty, doesn't it?" Mark said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "Yeah," Emma replied, forcing a smile, but she couldn't help the shiver that crawled up her spine as they got closer to the island. There was something strange about the place, the way it seemed too perfect. The palm trees swayed in unison, the waves lapped gently at the shore, and yet something felt wrong. "Mom, look, dolphins!" Sophie squealed, pointing out into the water. Emma tried to focus on the dolphins, hoping the excitement in her daughter's voice would lift her spirits. But as the ferry docked, her eyes were drawn to the group of resort staff waiting on the pier. Their smiles were too wide, their gazes too intense, as if they'd been expecting the family for far longer than just the ferry ride. The check-in process was seamless, almost too seamless. The resort manager, a tall, lean man named Mr. Calder, greeted them with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We're delighted to have you at Blackwater Cove," he said, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "This is a place where families make memories that last forever." Emma's heart skipped a beat at his choice of words. The way he said it made her feel cold, like a sudden gust of icy wind had swept through her. "You'll find everything you need in your villa," he continued. "Our staff is here to ensure you never want to leave." Something in the way he said "never" sent a chill down Emma's spine, but she brushed it off. She didn't want to ruin the vacation before it even began. The villa was gorgeous, sleek, modern, with large windows that overlooked the endless ocean. But Emma couldn't relax. There was a heaviness in the air, like the walls themselves were watching them. The first night, after they put the kids to bed, she and Mark sat on the porch, sipping wine and listening to the distant sound of waves. But the usual calm the ocean brought her was absent. "Do you feel off?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark looked at her, his brow furrowed. "Off? What do you mean?" "I don't know," she said, shaking her head. "It's just this place. It feels wrong, like it's too quiet, too perfect." Mark smiled, though his eyes held a flicker of doubt. "You're probably just tired. We've been looking forward to this for months, remember?" Emma nodded, but that feeling of dread refused to leave her. By the third day, the resort's strangeness became impossible to ignore. The staff was always around, hovering, watching, their smiles never faltering. When Emma took the kids to the beach, Mr. Calder appeared out of nowhere, offering towels and cold drinks with that same unnerving smile. "Everything all right, Mrs. Adams?" he asked, his voice smooth like silk. "You seem tense." Emma swallowed hard. "I'm fine, just adjusting." His smile widened. "Good. We like to keep our guests happy here at Blackwater Cove. It's important that everything goes smoothly." That night, Emma woke to the sound of footsteps outside the villa. She crept out of bed, careful not to wake Mark, and tiptoed to the window. What she saw made her blood run cold. The staff, every single one of them, stood in a circle on the beach, their backs to the villa, staring out at the ocean. Their bodies were perfectly still, arms at their sides, faces turned upward toward the sky. In the center of the circle stood Mr. Calder, his head bowed, as if in prayer. Her breath caught in her throat. She backed away from the window, her heart racing. What were they doing? Why did they look like that? The next morning, Emma was quiet as they ate breakfast. She couldn't shake the image from the night before, and when she glanced at Mr. Calder serving another family, his gaze met hers, a knowing smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He knew she had seen them. "We need to leave," she whispered to Mark when the kids ran off to play. "Something's wrong with this place. I saw them last night. They were out on the beach, like they were in some kind of ritual." Mark frowned. "Are you sure? You might have been dreaming." "No," Emma's voice shook. "I know what I saw. Please, we need to get off this island." Mark sighed, but he could see the terror in her eyes. "Okay," he said reluctantly. "I'll talk to the staff about an early checkout." When they approached the front desk later that day, Mr. Calder was already there, waiting for them. "I understand you're looking to leave," he said, his tone as smooth as ever. Mark nodded. "Yeah, we think it's time to go home." Mr. Calder's smile faltered for the first time. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. The last ferry of the week has already left." Emma's heart sank. "What do you mean, the last ferry?" "Oh, don't worry," Mr. Calder said, his voice soft again, almost a purr. "Everything will be taken care of. You're exactly where you need to be." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. The villa felt like a cage, and the walls seemed to hum with a low, oppressive energy. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Then she heard the door creaking open. She sat up, her heart pounding. In the moonlight, she saw the shadowy figure of a man standing in the doorway. It was Mr. Calder. "It's time," he whispered. Behind him, the rest of the staff appeared, their eyes dark and empty, their faces slack with the same eerie smile. They moved in unison, like puppets on strings, advancing slowly into the room. Emma screamed for Mark, but when he jolted awake, his eyes were already glazed empty. like he had been under their control for days. He stood up, joining the procession of staff without a word. "What are you doing?" Emma shrieked, trying to pull him back. But it was as if he didn't even recognize her. The kids were next. Sophie and Jacob shuffled out of their rooms, eyes vacant, mouths slightly open, as though they were in a trance. Emma tried to grab them, to wake them from whatever spell had been cast, but their small hands slipped through hers as they marched toward the beach. The night air was thick with the smell of salt and something else, something metallic, like blood. The staff formed their circle again, just as Emma had seen before, but this time, her family was in the center. "You've been chosen," Mr. Calder intoned, his voice hollow and far away. "Your family is the offering." Emma's body trembled as she watched helplessly. The ocean began to churn violently, waves crashing with unnatural force against the shore. In the distance, something dark and massive was rising from the depths, an ancient, twisted creature with eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. The staff began to chant in unison, their voices blending with the howl of the wind and the roar of the sea. Emma sobbed, collapsing to the ground as her children's blank eyes stared straight ahead, waiting for whatever came next. The creature from the ocean grew closer, its form towering above the beach, dripping with the weight which felt like decades. The last thing Emma saw was her husband's face turning toward her, his eyes black as the void. The next morning, the villa was spotless, the beds neatly made, and no sign of the Adams family remained. The staff was already waiting at the pier as a new ferry approached, bringing the next family to Blackwater Cove. Their smiles were wide,